Ace Frehley lowered his guitar, walked to the amplifier, and pulled the plug. No explanation. Just silence. The studio went dead. Not the silence of a pause between songs. The silence of something ending. The kind of silence that makes everyone stop breathing because they know they just witnessed a line being crossed. It was 1978. A recording studio in Los Angeles. Session work for a producer whose name doesn't matter anymore. Ace had been hired to lay down lead guitar for a track. Straightforward work, good money, professional arrangement. He'd done sessions like this dozens of times. But this one was different. The producer, a man in his 40s with expensive glasses and the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no, had been circling Ace all afternoon. Watching. Evaluating. Making small comments that seemed harmless but carried weight underneath. "You're the guy from Kiss, right? The makeup one?" Ace had nodded. Didn't elaborate. Never did. "Yeah, I thought so. Great showman. Real theatrical. That's the thing about you guys, you understand spectacle." The word hung in the air like smoke. Spectacle. Not musician. Not guitarist. Spectacle. Ace had plugged in his Les Paul without responding. Let his hands do the talking. Always had. They'd run through the track 3 times. Ace nailed it on the second take, a solo that served the song perfectly, melodic without being showy, technically clean without being cold. Exactly what the session needed. The producer had listened from the booth, arms crossed. When Ace finished, there was a long pause before the intercom clicked on. "That's good. Really solid. But I'm wondering, can you give me something with a little more flash? You know, more of that Kiss energy? The big rock star thing?" Ace had looked at the booth window. At the shadowy figure behind the glass. At the other session musicians in the room, bass player, drummer, rhythm guitarist. All carefully studying their instruments, nobody making eye contact. "The take was clean," Ace said quietly. "Oh, totally. Super clean. It's just, when I hired you, I was thinking we'd get that Ace Frehley showmanship, you know? The persona. Give the people what they expect from the Space Ace. The nickname." Said with just enough irony to make it sting. Ace didn't defend himself. He never did. He'd simply nodded, walked back to his position, and waited for the count. They ran it again. Ace played the exact same solo. Note for note. Perfect replica of take 2. The intercom clicked. "Ace, man, I need you to really cut loose here. Stop thinking so much. Just be yourself." That's when Ace had set down his guitar, walked to his amplifier, and pulled the plug. The other musicians had frozen. The bassist's fingers stopped mid-note. The drummer's sticks hovered over his kit. The rhythm guitarist looked up sharply, eyes wide. Ace had wound the cable around his hands slowly, deliberately, and started packing his guitar into its case. The producer's voice came through the intercom, tight with confusion and the beginning of anger. Ace? What are you doing?" Ace didn't answer. He fastened the latches on his case with quiet clicks that sounded deafening in the silent studio. "Ace, we're in the middle of a session here. You can't just..." Ace picked up his guitar case and walked toward the door. Hey! Hey! We have a contract. You can't walk out." Ace stopped at the door. Turned. Looked directly at the booth window where the producer stood, both hands pressed against the glass now, face red. "You wanted the Space Ace," Ace said, his voice level, almost gentle. "That's not who plays guitar. That's who sells tickets. You want spectacle, hire a performer. You wanted guitar, you already got it. Take 2 was the one." He walked out. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what nobody saw. Ace Frehley wasn't always Ace Frehley, legendary guitarist and founding member of Kiss. Before the makeup and the platforms and the smoke bombs, he was Paul Daniel Frehley from the Bronx, a kid who learned guitar because it was the only thing that made sense in a world that mostly didn't. He wasn't the best student. Wasn't the smoothest talker. Wasn't the guy who commanded rooms with his personality. But when he picked up a guitar, something aligned. His fingers understood what his words couldn't express. By his early 20s, he was doing session work around New York. Good money. Steady gigs. Musicians respected him because he showed up, played what was needed, and didn't cause problems. He had a reputation, reliable, professional, invisible. Then came Kiss. The makeup. The costume. The persona of the spaceman, later the space ace. Suddenly Paul Frehley disappeared behind silver paint and a character designed to sell records and fill arenas. And it worked. Kiss became massive. The biggest rock spectacle on Earth. But something happened that Ace hadn't anticipated. People stopped seeing him. They saw the character. When he played guitar solos that made grown men weep, critics wrote about the theatrical excess. When he crafted melodic lines that elevated songs into classics, reviewers talked about the gimmick. When he innovated techniques that other guitarists studied and copied, the industry called it showmanship. The makeup became a mask that he couldn't remove even when his face was clean. Subscribe and leave a comment, because some moments only make sense when we remember them together. Ace never complained about it publicly. Never gave interviews explaining his virtuosity. Never defended his musicianship. He just kept playing. Let the guitar speak. But in private moments, in studios, in rehearsal spaces, in the quiet times between spectacle, he carried the weight of being perpetually misunderstood. Of being hired for a character instead of a skill. Of watching producers and session leaders see the makeup instead of hearing the music. That afternoon in the Los Angeles studio wasn't the first time someone had asked for more Kiss energy, instead of recognizing the guitar work itself. It happened constantly. Ace had learned to navigate it, to smile and nod and give them what they thought they wanted while quietly proving his worth through the speakers. But that producer had crossed the line. Not by asking for something different, that was business. By implying that Ace was thinking too much. By suggesting that being himself meant being less technical, less precise, less of a musician. By treating virtuosity as overthinking and craftsmanship as inhibition. So Ace had made a choice. Not in anger. Not in ego. In quiet certainty that some things weren't worth compromising. The session bassist found Ace in the parking lot 20 minutes later. A guy named Marcus, 40 years old, 2 decades of studio work, played on hundreds of records nobody remembered. He approached Ace's car carefully, hands visible, the way you approach someone you don't want to spook. "Hey man," Marcus said. That was something." Ace was loading his guitar case into his trunk. He glanced at Marcus but didn't speak. "I just wanted to say," Marcus continued, "that solo on take 2? That was perfect, man. Exactly what the song needed. Melodic, clean, professional. I've done 1,000 sessions and that's how you serve a track." Ace closed his trunk. "Thanks. The producer's an idiot," Marcus said quietly. "He wanted a circus act. You gave him music. Those aren't the same thing." "I know." Marcus hesitated then. "Word's gonna spread about this." "You know that, right? Producers talk." Ace Frehley walked out of a session. "That's gonna follow you." Ace looked at him directly. "Let it." "You sure?" "Sessions dry up fast when you get labeled difficult." "I'm not difficult," Ace said. "I'm clear. He wanted something I don't do. Better he finds out now than after we waste more time." Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, I hear that." He turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, take 2 is the one I'm gonna remember." "That lick in the bridge? Tasteful as hell. That's the take a real guitarist would keep." After Marcus left, Ace sat in his car for a long time. Not upset. Not angry. Just clear. He'd made the right choice. Walking away from the wrong thing was just as important as showing up for the right thing. Away from the spotlight, Ace made a choice no one expected. Word did spread. The producer complained to other producers. Ace Frehley was difficult. Unprofessional. Walked out mid-session because he couldn't handle creative direction. The story got embellished. Ace threw a tantrum. Ace demanded special treatment. Ace refused to take notes. Some session work dried up. Producers who'd been considering him for projects quietly went another direction. The whispers followed him for months. But something else happened too. Marcus, the session bassist, started telling a different version. In studios, during breaks, in the quiet conversations musicians have when producers aren't listening. He told people about take two. About the perfect solo that served the song. About a producer who couldn't hear music through his preconceptions. About a guitarist who respected his craft enough to walk away from disrespect. That version spread too. Slower. Quieter. Through different channels. 6 months later, Ace got a call from a producer named Daniel Chin. Independent guy. Worked mostly on jazz fusion and experimental rock. Reputation for perfectionism and respect for musicians. I heard a story about you, Daniel said. Want to know if it's true? Probably isn't, Ace said. Story is you walked out of a session because the producer wanted spectacle instead of music. That true? Ace paused. Something like that. Good, Daniel said. I'm working on a project. Instrumental album. Complex arrangements. I need a lead guitarist who understands when to serve the song instead of dominating it. Every guitarist I've talked to wants to show off. I need someone who knows the difference between flash and craft. You interested? Ace showed up to that session 2 weeks later. They ran through the first track once for feel, then started recording. Ace played a solo that wove through the composition like thread through fabric. Present but not overwhelming, technical but not showy, exactly what the music needed. When he finished, Daniel's voice came through the intercom. That's the one. You don't want another take? Why? That's perfect. That's the sound. You nailed it first try. Ace smiled. First time in months. They worked together for 3 weeks. Completed an album that nobody bought but musicians studied. Jazz magazines reviewed it. Guitar clinics analyzed it. Session players passed it around like secret knowledge. And Ace Frehley's reputation shifted. Slowly. Among the people who mattered. The musicians. The engineers. The producers who cared about craft. He became known not as difficult, but as clear. Not as a diva, but as someone who knew his worth. Not as the guy who walked out of sessions, but as the guy who wouldn't compromise his integrity for a paycheck. What followed silenced everyone in the room. 10 years later, 1988. Ace was teaching a master class at a music school in New York. Small room. 20 students. Mostly young guitarists trying to figure out if they had what it took to make it professionally. During the Q&A, a kid in the back raised his hand. Mr. Frehley, how do you deal with people who don't take you seriously because of the Kiss thing? Like people who think you're just a showman? The room went quiet. Dangerous question. Everyone knew Ace's reputation for not discussing this stuff. Ace looked at the kid for a long moment. Then he reached for his guitar, a beat-up Les Paul that had been with him for 20 years. Let me tell you a story, Ace said. 1978, session in Los Angeles. Producer wanted the Space Ace. I gave him the guitarist. He didn't want that. So I left. The students stared. You walked out? The kid asked. I unplugged my amp and walked out, Ace said quietly. Lost work over it. Got labeled difficult. But I kept the one thing that mattered. I kept knowing what I was worth. He played a simple melodic phrase. Clean. Perfect. No effects. No spectacle. You want to know how to deal with people who don't take you seriously? Don't explain. Don't argue. Don't defend. Just play. And when they ask for something you're not, walk away. Someone else will hear what you're actually doing. He set the guitar down gently. The ones who matter always do. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. 20 years after that Los Angeles session, Marcus the bassist ran into that producer at a music industry event. The producer was complaining about modern session players, how nobody had integrity anymore. Marcus smiled. Remember Ace Frehley? Guy who walked out on you in '78? The producer's face darkened. Don't remind me. Unprofessional. I still have that tape. Marcus interrupted. Take 2. The one you rejected. I've used it in 3 teaching seminars. That's how you serve a song. That's integrity. The producer had nothing to say to that. Ace Frehley never knew about that conversation. He didn't need to. He'd already said everything that mattered. Without words.